What if your greatest scars were actually the blueprints for your future success? What if your greatest scars were actually the blueprints for your future success? What if the worst thing that ever happened to you wasn't the demolition of your life, but the demol- what if your greatest scars were actually the blueprints for your future success? What if the worst thing that ever happened to you wasn't the demolition of your life, but the demolition of the life you were never supposed to keep? Some of you are standing in the middle of emotional rubble. Relationships collapsed, careers disappeared, your reputation was burned to the ground. You lost years behind prison walls. You lost opportunities. You lost people. Maybe you even lost yourself. When everything falls apart, society teaches you to mourn the building. Today, I want to challenge you to examine the foundation because sometimes the fire didn't destroy your future. It exposed a faulty structure that was destined to collapse anyway. Every architect knows you cannot safely build a skyscraper on cracked concrete. You don't simply repaint rotten wood. You don't decorate unstable foundations. You demolish what you cannot carry the weight of. And that's what comes next. The question isn't whether your old life burned down. The question is, what are you like going through right now to build on the empty lot that's left behind? This episode isn't about surviving another difficult season. It isn't about coping. It isn't about, getting back to normal. Normal is what got many of us here. This conversation is about becoming the architect of a life so intentional that every decision, every habit, every relationship, every dollar, every hour, and every setback becomes another carefully measured piece of a masterpiece that only you can construct. The next 5 years will pass you by if you're not focused. They will pass whether you are prepared for them or not. The only question is whether you arrive in 2031 living inside someone else's blueprint or walking through a life you intentionally designed. Welcome back to the Conviction Fiction Podcast, where we challenge the stories that keep people trapped and replace them with truth that move lives forward. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers. If you follow this podcast for any length of time, you already know this isn't about pretending the past never happened. We don't erase convictions, mistakes, trauma. We don't erase prison. We don't erase addiction, failure, betrayal. Um, Got a little tongue tied there. We don't erase betrayal. We don't erase failure. We study them. We interrogate them. We extract every lesson they have to offer until our greatest pain becomes our greatest teacher. That's what redemption looks like. For years, I thought freedom meant escaping prison, just getting out. Then I discovered something many people never realize. You can leave a prison without leaving the mindset that built it. You can earn money while still thinking like you're broke. You can have healthy relationships while still expecting abandonment. You can own a business. You can have your own business while secretly believing you don't deserve success. You can walk through an open door while mentally living behind closed gates. That's why survival isn't the destination. Survival is simply permission to start building. Think about the world's greatest cities. Before there were skylines, there were empty fields. There were Before the bridges were built, there were rivers no one knew how to cross. Before there were monuments for our heroes, there were blueprints sitting on someone's desk. Vision always comes before construction. Today, I want you to stop thinking like someone trying to recover from disaster. I want you to think like an architect. Architects don't panic when they see an empty lot. They see possibility. They don't complain about what isn't there. They imagine what could be there. They don't ask, well, why did this happen to me? Instead, they ask, what can be built right now? That's the mindset we're developing today. Over the next few moments, we're going to conduct a complete site survey of your life. We're going to expect the structural integrity of your character. We're going to draft a 5 year blueprint that carries you from ground zero to personal sovereignty. We'll identify the materials you need to build something that markets can't crash, critics can't steal, and circumstances can't easily destroy. Because the greatest project you'll ever manage is the construction of yourself. And as we begin, I want you to remember something I wrote in Turning Forward. If you don't have it, go check it out. And it's basically your past may explain your foundation. It does not have permission to dictate your final design. The wreckage behind you is not proof that you finished. It's proof the construction is finally ready to be started, right? So grab your hard hat, unroll the blueprints, pick up a pencil. Today, we stop living like survivors because today we began thinking like architects. Welcome to the Conviction Fiction. Every construction project begins the same way, not with hammers, not with concrete, not with cranes. It begins with a survey. Before anyone pours a foundation, an architect walks the property. They measure the elevation, they identify what can be preserved, they inspect the soil, what must be reinforced, and what has to be demolished before anything new can rise. Most people skip this step in rebuilding their lives. Instead, they try to build on emotional quicksand. They lose a relationship and immediately limp into another. They lose a job and chase another paycheck without examining the habits that kept them financially vulnerable. They leave prison and become obsessed with proving everybody wrong before they've taken the time to really understand who they actually are without the prison number attached to their identity. They experience betrayal, failure, addiction, divorce, or public humiliation and rush to replace what they lost instead of investigating why the structure collapsed in the first place. You cannot rush a site survey. If you do, you'll spend the next decade preparing or trying to repair cracks that should have been addressed before the first brick was even laid. That's why I need you to hear something that may completely change how you view your life. Total system collapse is not always destruction. Sometimes, just sometimes, it's site preparation. Think about that. When a city wants to build a hospital, maybe an airport or skyscraper, it looks like they're putting apartments up here in Atlanta every single day. They don't apologize for clearing the land. They don't mourn every abandoned warehouse that used to occupy the property. They understand that something bigger is coming. Yet when life clears out our land, we immediately assume we've been abandoned. We stand in the middle of the broken dreams asking, like, why me? Or maybe a better question would be, what was too unstable to remain standing? That relationship you thought would last forever, was it built on trust or dependency? The career you lost, was it truly your calling or simply your comfort zone? That version of yourself you're grieving, was it authentic or was it performance designed to earn acceptance from people who were never going to value you anyway? These are difficult questions, but architects don't build with emotions, they build with measurements. So today we're taking measurements. Let's inspect the foundation. When I look back over my own journey, I can see things that once felt permanent, but were actually temporary scaffolding. Prison taught me discipline. It also taught me hypervigilance. It taught me resilience, but it also taught me distrust. It taught me how to survive, but it did not automatically teach me how to live. For years after my release, I carried survival instincts into situations that required peace. Every conversation felt like a confrontation waiting to happen. Every opportunity felt temporary. Every compliment felt suspicious. My environment had changed, but my architecture had not. Some of you are living the same exact reality. You escape the circumstance, but the circumstances never escaped you. Now let's identify something every architect understands. Every single building has load bearing structures. Remove the wrong wall, and the entire building collapses. Your life has load bearing values too. Integrity may be one, faith may be another, personal accountability, discipline, resilience, compassion, humility. Those are structured beings. They hold everything else together. Then there are things you mistakenly believe that they were essential, but were actually faulty wiring, like pride, validation, the need to always be right, anger disguised as strength, people pleasing disguised as kindness, isolation disguised as independence, control disguised as leadership. Those aren't structural supports. They're electrical fires waiting to happen. Many of us spend years protecting the very habits that continue burning our lives down. Here's an exercise I want every listener to do. Take out a notebook, just find one. Draw two columns. Label the first column load bearing and label the second column demolition. Now, under load bearing, I want you to write every value that has consistently moved you toward becoming the person you respect, not the person people applaud or laugh at or anything like that, the person you respect. Now, under demolition, write every habit that repeatedly drags you back to old versions of yourself, not just the obvious ones. I want you to dig a little bit deeper. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's comparing yourself to everyone else's highlight reel. Maybe it's saying yes because you're afraid people won't like your no. Maybe it's refusing therapy because you think healing somehow makes you weak. Maybe it's scrolling for 3 hours every night on your phone while telling yourself you don't have time to pursue your purpose. Be completely honest. Architects don't lie to blueprints. Neither should you. Here's the shift that changes everything. You are no longer the victim standing in front of a burned down house asking whose fault it was. You are the lead architect standing on the empty lot, holding the only set of blueprints that matter. Read that again mentally. You are no longer waiting for permission. No one is coming to rebuild your life for you, not your family, not the government, not your employer, not your spouse or significant other, not your church, friends. Um, Support is valuable, mentors are valuable, community is necessary, but none of them can pick up the pencil and draft your future. That responsibility belongs to you. And I know some of you are thinking, man, Antoine, man, you don't understand how much I've lost. Maybe I don't understand every detail, but I understand collapse. I understand waking up and realizing the life I had planned no longer exists. I understand wondering whether your past has permanently disqualified you from your future. I also understand what it feels like to stand on emotional rubble, wondering if there's enough to anything left to build something meaningful out of it. And there is, there always is. There's always something meaningful because buildings don't begin with materials, they begin with vision. And vision is something no prison can confiscate, no bankruptcy can repossess it, no rejection can eliminate it, no conviction can permanently erase your vision. As long as you still possess the ability to imagine a better future for yourself, the construction project is still alive. That's why this first phase matters so much. Don't rush to decorate a life you haven't designed. Survey the land, measure the foundation, protect the values that can bear the weight of your future, and demolish those habits that keep collapsing your progress. Because later on in this segment, we're going to inspect the steel inside your story and discover what those scars look like. Those scars you've been hiding, because they may actually be the strongest structural support you ever possessed. Now, now that we've surveyed the land, it's time to inspect the steel. Every architect knows something that most people never think about. The tallest buildings in the world don't stand because of what you can see, they stand because of what you can't see. Behind the glass, behind the concrete, behind the polished exterior, it's a skeleton of reinforced steel engineered to withstand forces most people never even consider. Earthquakes, hurricane force winds, thousands of tons of downward pressure. The building survives because the structure beneath the surface was designed for stress long before the stress ever arrived. Your life is no different. Everyone sees your smile. Very few people see your steel. They see your business that you may have started, but they don't see the nights you question whether you were capable of starting that business. They see the family pictures, but they don't see the healing conversations that took years to have. They see maybe a podcast, right? They see my podcast, but they don't see the hours of self doubt that I have before I press record. They see the success. They don't see the failures that quietly reinforce the character required to handle success without being destroyed by it. That's why I want you to stop apologizing for your scars. You spent years trying to hide the very evidence that proves you survived, that you are a survivor. Some people spend their lives trying to erase every reminder of their past. I understand the temptation. I went through it myself. I didn't want nobody to know that I had been locked up. Nobody wants to relive the worst chapters of their life, but architects don't throw away quality steel because it has scratches. In fact, some of the strongest steel ever manufactured has endured incredible heat before it reached its final form. That's the same that is true for people. Heat doesn't automatically weaken you. Sometimes it reveals what was there all along. Think back over the last 2 years, just not 20 years ago, not your childhood, not your biggest mistake, but just the last 2 years. What challenged you? Who left? What opportunities disappeared? What unexpected responsibilities landed on your shoulders? Or how many times did you think, I don't know if I can keep doing this? Now ask yourself another question. Are you still here? If the answer is yes, then you're stronger than the version of yourself who first entered those battles. That doesn't mean the experience wasn't painful. It means pain wasn't the final chapter. Some of you confuse healing with forgetting. Healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering without surrendering your future to the memory. That's structural integrity. The event no longer controls the engineer. The past no longer dictates the blueprint. The scar no longer defines the identity. It simply documents where enforcement occurred. Now, let's perform another assessment. Every successful construction project depends upon inventory. Now, an architect doesn't simply start building, right? They count the materials, how much concrete we're going to need, how much steel, how much lumber, how much labor, how much capital, how much money we're going to need to build this project. Most people dramatically underestimate the resources already available to them because they are obsessed with what they don't have. Let's change that. I want you to divide your current resources into three categories. The first category is immediate survival tools. These are the things keeping you moving today, right? They're going to keep you moving every day. Let's change that. I want you to divide your current resources into three categories. The first category is immediate survival tools. These are the things that keep you moving today. Your current job, reliable transportation, a supportive spouse, your health, a mentor, I don't know, a stable routine, a willingness to learn. Maybe all you have is determination and a library card. That's okay. Don't underestimate either one. History has repeatedly shown that disciplined people outperform talented people who never organize themselves. All right, the second category I want you to make is midterm assets. These are the resources that aren't fully producing results yet, but are growing in value. Maybe it's your education, your some certifications that you're getting, relationship you've intentionally cultivated. Your reputation, skills you're developing after work every evening, books that you've read, the audience you're slowly building online. Maybe it's the business that's generating a little more revenue every month. These assets compound. They rarely explode overnight. They accumulate quietly. That's how architects think. Every beam installed today supports another floor tomorrow. Now, the third category I want you to create is long term capital. This is where real sovereignty begins. We're going to talk about character, wisdom, integrity, faith, the ability to solve difficult problems, conflict resolution, communication skills, leadership, emotional regulation, the discipline to delay gratification. No recession can confiscate those. No employer can terminate them. No economic collapse can erase them. Markets fluctuate, technology changes, entire industries disappear. But a person who knows how to learn, adapt, communicate, and lead can build value almost anywhere. That's your long term capital. That's wealth no one can repossess. Now, let's talk about something architects never compromise, and that's perimeter security. Every major construction site has barriers, not because the builders hate people, but because unfinished structures are vulnerable. So are you. Many people spend years rebuilding their lives while allowing everyone unrestricted access to the construction zone. Negative friends, constant drama, old addictions, people who only remember who you used to be. Maybe it's the voices that criticize every improvement because your growth exposes their stagnation. Here's the difficult truth. Not everyone deserves unrestricted access to your future. Boundaries are not punishment. Boundaries are protection. If your peace disappears every time someone calls, you need a boundary. If your progress stalls every time you revisit old environments, you need to set a boundary. If your discipline collapses every weekend because you're trying to fit into a lifestyle you've already outgrown, you need a boundary. If every conversation that you have with someone leaves you emotionally exhausted, you need to set a boundary. Master builders understand that open gates invite unnecessary damage. Strong walls don't exist because the architect is fearful. They exist because what's inside is valuable. The same applies to your life. Protect your mornings, protect your attention, protect your health, your family, protect your vision, protect your peace. You cannot build something extraordinary while constantly defending it from preventable sabotage. And let me speak directly to those who carry convictions, failures. Maybe you have addictions or seasons where you wish never had happened. Your past may always be a part of your story, but it doesn't have to become the ceiling over your future. One of the greatest lies people believe is that redemption means pretending the old building never existed. Absolutely not. Redemption is walking people through the new structure while showing them the foundation beneath it and saying, I know exactly where the cracks used to be. That's why I wrote Turning Forward. Not because I wanted people to admire where I've been, but because I wanted them to understand that collapse doesn't have to be the final blueprint. Every scar can become steel. Every lesson can become reinforcement. Every setback can become structural intelligence if you're willing to learn from it instead of merely surviving it. Because in the next segment, we're finally going to unroll the blueprints. No more looking backward. No more measuring the damage. We're going to draft the next 5 years with the precision of a master architect, moving from ground zero to June 2031, one intentional decision at a time. The foundation has been inspected, the steel has been tested. Now it's time to build. Now comes the moment every architect has been waiting for. You ready? The survey is complete. The structural assessment has been finished. The soil has been tested. The materials have been counted. Now the blueprints come out. This is where dreams separate from designs. Everybody has dreams. Very few people, though, have plans. A dream will tell you, one day I want to own a business. A blueprint will tell you what certification skills, revenue targets, daily disciplines must exist before that business can survive. A dream will tell you that you want a better marriage. But the blueprint says, who must I become every single day for my spouse to experience a healthier version of me? A dream asks, or may say, I want financial freedom. But the blueprint says, what habits are keeping me financially in prison? And what systems will create wealth long after my emotions wear off? Architects don't build on wishes, guys. They build on specifications. That's exactly what we're going to do. I want you to imagine standing exactly 5 years from today. It's June 2031. Close your eyes if you have to. Want to know, where are you living? How do you wake up? Who's sitting around your table? What work are you doing? What kind of father are you? What kind of mother? What kind of husband? What kind of wife? How do people describe your character when you leave the room? What have you mastered in 2031? Where have you finally let go of? Most importantly, who have you become? You notice something? Notice something. No, you have to notice something. That's a requirement. I didn't ask you how much money you have, because money does matter, but money without character simply magnifies who you already are. Sovereignty isn't measured by your bank account. It's measured by your ability to govern yourself regardless of the circumstances. Can you control your emotions? Can you manage your finances? Can you keep your word? Even less than that, can you remain disciplined when no one is watching? That's sovereignty. And that's what we're designing. Now, here's the mistake most people make. They try to build a penthouse before they pour the foundation. They want six-figure incomes without six-figure discipline. They want influence without credibility. They want peace without forgiveness. They want confidence without competence. They want the freedom, but not the responsibility. Construction doesn't work that way. Neither does transformation. That's why the first year of your blueprint has only one assignment only, and that's laying the foundation. Not the mansion, the foundation. Lay the foundation. If I ask you to build a skyscraper in 12 months, you laugh. But many people expect to undo 20 years of destructive thinking in 6 weeks. Growth isn't rushed, it's layered. Year one is about becoming the kind of person who keeps promises to yourself. Wake up when you said you would. Read when you don't feel like it. Exercise even when motivation disappears. Keep your budget. Protect your calendar. Pray. Write. Learn. Show up consistently. Boring? Yeah, maybe. Powerful? Absolutely. Because consistency is what pours concrete. No one applauds concrete. Visitors don't take pictures of foundations. Nobody drives by a construction site and say, "Ooh, look at that incredible slab right there." But without it, nothing else survives. The greatest mistake our culture has made is celebrating visible success while ignoring invisible discipline. Everybody wants the ribbon cutting ceremony. Very few people appreciate the months spent digging trenches. That's why I tell people all the time, stop chasing applause, stop chasing alignment. Alignment means your daily habits agree with your future vision. If your dream is to become healthy, but every decision reinforces unhealthy habits, you're misaligned. If your vision is financial freedom, but you're spending every cent on emotional impulses, you're misaligned. If your goal is becoming a respected leader, but you refuse feedback, you're misaligned. The blueprint isn't broken. The daily execution is. Now let's talk about something architects obsess over. And those are measurements. Measurements. Imagine hiring an architect who says, we just kind of look at it, put an eye on it, eyeball it a little bit, man, you would fire them immediately. Every beam has measurements. Every doorway has specifications. Every window has exact placement. Precision creates stability. So why do we approach our futures with vague intentions, though? I want to read more. Well, how much? I want to save some money. How much money? I want to grow spiritually. How? I want better relationships. With who? By doing what? Vague goals create vague lives. Architects eliminate ambiguity. That's why I want you to create what I call micro actions connected to the macro vision. Your macro vision is June 2031. Your micro actions begin tomorrow morning. If your vision is writing a book, your micro action might be writing 500 words every day, just 500. If your vision is financial independence, your micro action might be automatically investing $50 every Friday. If your vision has become physically healthy, your micro action might be making one intentional phone call. Physically healthy, you might want to walk 30 minutes before breakfast. Small actions, massive trajectory. People overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 month. They dramatically underestimate what disciplined actions can accomplish in 5 years. Think about where you were 5 years ago. Now think about everything that's changed, not because of one decision, because of thousands of decisions. One conversation, one opportunity, one habit, one setback, one lesson, one choice repeated again and again. That's how construction begins, brick by brick, beam by beam, day by day. There's another truth architects understand. They build in phases. No construction site completes everything at once. The foundation crew doesn't install windows. Electricians don't do concrete. Roofers don't do the walls. Each phase prepares for the next. Your life works exactly the same way. Maybe this isn't your season to expand. Maybe it's not your season to learn. Maybe this isn't your season to lead. Maybe it's your season to develop competence. Maybe this isn't your season to harvest. Maybe it's your season to plant. Stop comparing your construction phase to someone else's finished building. Social media, man, I use it, but it has really convinced people they're failing because someone else posted pictures from whatever they got going on in their life. What social media rarely shows is the years spent staring at blueprints, like the loans, getting the setbacks, the redesigns, the inspections, the delays. Every masterpiece has hidden construction seasons. Honor yours. As I wrote in Turning Forward, redemption isn't found in dramatic moments alone. It's built in ordinary decisions repeated with extraordinary consistency. That's how lives change. Not through one emotional speech, not through one motivational video, not through a New Year's resolution, but through thousands of ordinary days where you quietly become the person your future requires. So tonight, before you go to bed, I want you to do something different. Don't make another wish. Draft a blueprint. Write down where you want to stand in June 2031. Then work backward. What has to be done by June 2030, June 29, by next summer, in the 6 months from now, maybe 30 days from now. Then ask yourself, what is the smallest action I can take tomorrow morning that moves me 1 inch closer to that life? Because architects don't build 5 years at a time. They build a day. One measured decision, one intentional habit, one carefully placed brick. And before long, the impossible begins to look inevitable. So we're going to get into talking about the materials that create true sovereignty, like the skills, the health, relationships, and the kind of personal infrastructure that cannot be taken away by recessions, job loss, public opinion, or the mistakes of yesterday. So we've arrived, and now the blueprint has been drafted. It's time to order the materials. Every architect eventually reaches a point where vision alone is no longer enough. The drawings are complete, the permits have been approved, the timeline has been established. But none of it matters if the raw materials arrive at the job site. You can have the most beautiful blueprint ever created, but if you build with weak materials, the building will eventually collapse under its own weight. The same is true for your life. Many people are trying to construct extraordinary futures with ordinary discipline. They're trying to build confidence with constant comparison, trying to build peace with a mind that never rests. They're trying to build financial freedom while spending every dollar they get. They're trying to build healthy families without first becoming emotionally healthy themselves. The blueprint isn't a problem. The materials are. So let's ask a question. I'm going to ask guys a question. You know, I always ask questions because I want you to think really hard about this. What are you building yourself with every single day? What are you building yourself with? Because whether you realize it or not, you're constantly importing materials into your life. Every book you read, every conversation you entertain, every podcast you listen to, every song you listen to, every thought you rehearse, every hour you waste, those are all construction materials. Some reinforce your future, others quietly weaken it. One of the greatest mistakes I see people make after experiencing a major collapse is becoming obsessed with replacing what they lost instead of acquiring what can never be taken away again. Think about that, because jobs come and go. Companies close, technology changes everything, entire industries become obsolete. Economies fluctuate, markets crash, but there are certain assets that continue increasing in value regardless of what's happening around you. The ability to communicate, the ability to solve problems, the ability to lead people, the ability to learn new skills quickly, the ability to think critically, the ability to remain emotionally stable under pressure. Those sovereign assets never go away. No one can repossess your discipline. No one can foreclose on your character or terminate your integrity. No one can lay you off of your ability to adapt. Those are investments that continue paying dividends long after trends have changed. That's why I want you to begin thinking differently about education. Don't chase information, chase capability. There's a difference. Information fills notebooks. Capability changes lives. Reading a book about leadership doesn't make you a leader. Leading people through difficult circumstances does. Some people think watching videos about financial freedom will create wealth for them. That doesn't create wealth. Building systems that consistently produce value does. Listening to motivational speeches won't transform your future. Listening to podcasts won't transform your future, but you have to practice the discipline every day and every night. Knowledge is the blueprint. Execution is the building. Now, let's talk about digital leverage. We live in a time when one idea can travel around the world before you finish your morning coffee or your Red Bull, right? I kind of do one or the other depending on the day. One skill can become an online business. One story can encourage thousands of people. One podcast episode or a book, one course, one piece of content can continue serving people while you're asleep. That's leverage. For years, many of us were taught to exchange hours for dollars. There's dignity in hard work. I've worked jobs that require every ounce of energy I had. I worked in a brick company. I cleaned toilets. I sold monkeys. And that's not a joke. I sold monkeys like a monkey. You would put your hand in the monkey's butt and you could grab a ball in his throat and like eat like a real monkey. But at some point, I had to realize I had to design a system that
continues to function even when I'm not physically standing right there. Ask yourself this question: what am I creating today that still produces value tomorrow? Maybe it's that business, maybe it's a certification, maybe it's investing or writing, maybe it's mentoring, maybe it's learning a technical skill that remains in demand. Whatever it is, build something that continues working after you've gone home for the day. That's part of sovereignty. Now, let's talk beyond money and wealth, because if all you build is money, you've constructed a very expensive prison. Architects don't design one room, they design ecosystems. Think about your life the same way. You need an ecosystem. You need health, wealth, relationships, purpose, faith, mental clarity. You need community. None of these can permanently replace the others. Money can't repair like that untreated anxiety you had. Success cannot replace absent relationships. Achievement cannot compensate for poor health. Influence cannot substitute for integrity. If one system collapses, then the other should be strong enough to stabilize the structure. That's resilience. That's intelligent design. When I coach my baseball team, I don't teach them to become one dimensional athletes. We work on throwing, fielding, running, communication, confidence, resilience after errors, because one bad bounce doesn't decide a game. The same principle applies to life. One setback shouldn't destroy your future because your identity isn't resting on one pillar. Build multiple pillars. Strengthen every room in the house. Here's another lesson every master builder understands. They never sacrifice structural integrity for appearances. Our culture encourages the exact opposite. Look successful, sound successful, post success, perform success. Architects aren't impressed by paint. They're inspecting the beams. You can fool people with appearances, but gravity isn't fooled. Eventually, every building reveals whether it was constructed with excellence or shortcuts. The same is true for character. That's why discipline often looks boring. Nobody applauds the early mornings or celebrates the unnecessary distractions. Nobody notices the books you read when nobody else is around. Nobody sees the workouts, the budgeting, the prayer, the journaling, the uncomfortable conversations, maybe counseling sessions. But those unseen moments become the invisible beings supporting everything people eventually admire. People often ask, where does your confidence come from? Well, I answer or respond with real confidence doesn't come from positive thinking. It comes from accumulated evidence. Every promise that I kept to myself, every difficult thing I finished, every temptation I overcame, every commitment I honor. You're depositing evidence into your own mind that says, I can trust myself. That is the strongest construction materials you'll ever possess: self-trust. Without it, every blueprint feels impossible. With it, even difficult projects become manageable because you're proven to yourself that you'll keep showing up. When I wrote No Going Back, one of the themes was that redemption isn't simply escaping your old life. It's intentionally constructing a new one that's strong enough to withstand future storms. And that's why I want to leave you before our final segment. Don't spend your life collecting decorations, collect materials. Invest in skills that increase your value. Protect your health because your body is the construction equipment carrying every dream you'll ever build. Invest in relationships that challenge your growth. Develop a faith that anchors you when circumstances shake. And you want to create systems that continue producing value long after motivation disappears. But more importantly, wait, there's more. Become the kind of builder who is willing to spend years strengthening the foundation for a life that may not receive applause until later on. Because delayed applause is far better than early admiration followed by a structural collapse. In our final walkthrough, we're going to step back from the construction site and look at the life you've been building, not with the eyes of someone merely hoping to survive, but with the authority of someone who now understands that they are no longer rebuilding the ruins of yesterday. They're governing the kingdom they're intentionally creating tomorrow. Now, the construction is almost complete, right? The foundation has been poured. The steel has been inspected. The walls have been framed. The electrical systems are functioning. The roof has been secured, but it's one step before anyone receives the keys. That's the walkthrough. Every architect, every contractor, every owner walks the building one final time, not to admire it, but to inspect it. They don't ask, does this look good? They ask, does this match the blueprint? Is this what I was expecting? That question is where many lives begin to drift. Somewhere along the journey, people stop comparing their progress to the vision they once had. Instead, they compare themselves to everyone else. They begin decorating a life they never intended to build. They chase titles they never wanted. They purchase things they don't need. They accept relationships that compromise their peace. 5 years later, they wake up exhausted. Not because they failed, but because they succeeded at constructing someone else's definition of success, and that shouldn't happen to you. The purpose of a daily walkthrough is alignment. Every evening before you go to sleep, become the architect and the inspector. Walk through your day. Did today's decisions support tomorrow's vision? Did today's conversation strengthen your future or weaken it? Or did your habits move you one brick closer to the life you're designing? This isn't about perfection. Construction sites are messy. I don't know, it's mud, it's dirt. You're going to leave that dusty. Progress leaves dust everywhere. There are delays. Materials sometimes arrive late. Unexpected weather slows everything down. Blueprints occasionally require revision. None of those things mean the project has failed. They simply require adjustments. That's one of the greatest lessons I've learned in life. Flexibility is not weakness. Compromise on your value, or compromising your values is weakness, right? Architects revise plans all the time. What they never compromise is structural integrity. Your life should operate the same way. You may have to change careers. You may have to relocate. You may have to learn new technology. You may have to even reinvent your business. You may even have to grieve relationships that no longer fit the future you're building. That's adaptation. Don't confuse adaptation with abandoning your principles: integrity, faith, accountability, compassion, discipline. Those remain load-bearing walls no matter what season you're in. Now, I want you to do something with me. Picture yourself walking through your completed life, not because you're finished growing. None of us are, but because you're finally become the person that you decided to be. It's June 2031. You wake up in a home built on peace instead of chaos. You open your calendar, your schedule reflects your priorities instead of other people's emergencies. Your finances no longer control your emotions because you built systems instead of depending on luck. Your body is stronger because you honored it instead of neglecting it. And your family starting to trust your words because your actions consistently match them. Your business serves people. Your faith anchors you. Your character speaks before your resume ever has to. Now ask yourself this: what would the version of you standing in June 2031 say to the person listening today? I don't think they'd say, work harder. I think they'd say, don't quit. Keep laying the bricks. Keep honoring your commitments. Keep protecting your peace. Keep learning, forgiving, and growing. Keep showing up, because extraordinary lives are built by ordinary people who refuse to stop building. And I've learned this from coaching young baseball players in my own time, right? Championship teams don't win because every play goes perfectly. Every team is going to make error. Every team Every hitter is going to strike out. Every pitcher is going to give up some hits or home runs. The difference is what happens after the mistake. Do you hang your head? Do you blame each other? Or do they get ready for the next pitch? Life is no different. Your blueprint doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. Every mistake is another opportunity to adjust your footing. Every setback is another inspection report showing where reinforcement is needed. Every disappointment teaches you something the blueprint didn't anticipate. That's not failure, that's refinement. For those of you who have experienced incarceration, for those rebuilding after addiction, for those recovering from divorce or grieving someone you've lost, for those wondering if your best years are already behind you, hear me clearly. You're not standing in the ruins of your future. You're standing on the construction site of your next chapter. There's a profound difference. One mindset looks backward and asks, what did I lose? While the other looks forward and asks, what can I build with what remains? That's the architect mindset. It refuses to allow the worst chapter of your life to become the title of your life. It refuses to believe that one conviction, one mistake, one betrayal, or one failure, or one season of collapse has the authority to define the next 50 years. As I shared throughout Turning Forward, redemption isn't a destination you accidentally stumble upon. It's a structure you intentionally construct. One decision, one habit, one conversation, one act of courage at a time. Eventually, those individual choices become something remarkable, not because each decision seemed dramatic, but because together they formed a life that could withstand storms. As we close today's episode, I want to leave you with one final challenge. Tonight, that's right, tonight, don't simply set another goal. Draft a covenant with your future. Write down the architect you're choosing to become. Write down the values that will never be negotiated. Write down the habits that deserve demolition. Write down the skills you're committed to mastering. And write down the people you're committed to serving. Once you have this legacy written down, you won't be standing for long in despair. Write it down, then sign it, date it, fold it, put it somewhere you'll see it often, because one day, maybe 5 years from now, you'll pull that paper back out. You'll read the words with older eyes and a stronger spirit. You'll realize that what once looked impossible became ordinary because you kept showing up. Not every day was exciting. Not every week was successful. Not every month went according to plan, but every season added another brick, another beam, another floor. And before you knew it, you weren't just surviving the collapse anymore. You were living inside something you intentionally designed. Remember this. A survivor asks, how do I make it through the day? How do I make it through the day? An architect asks, what am I building that will still be standing decades from now? At the Conviction Fiction Podcast, that's what we're about. Not helping you escape your past, helping you construct a future worthy of every lesson your past has taught you. Because your conviction may explain where you've been, but your blueprint determines where you're going. So pick up the pencil, roll out the plans, trust the process, and starting today, build like someone whose greatest work is still under construction. Thank you for joining the Conviction Fiction Podcast today. See you next episode.